Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen. I'm sure that you can see this. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Oh, actually, I have you all on the side, so that's excellent. I can see you. So thank you, everyone, for having me today. I think this is my third presence with this forum, and I'm so excited to share more with you on emotional intelligence and leadership. And when we discuss the idea of transformation and the importance that leadership plays in transformation across organizations, it's kind of not, intuitive to say vulnerable leadership and how that effectively helps transformations across different projects and different needs in business. But we want to understand the value of what that vulnerability lends itself when dealing with business transformational teams and your clients. So let's get into it. So what does it mean, this vulnerable leadership? I use it a lot. I discuss a lot across my teams with my clients and with my leadership. So it's a couple of things, and we'll discuss 5 key areas that really distinctly share the tools and the ways that you can engage as a vulnerable leader throughout this evening. And one of the key things that you want to ask yourself is, what do I have to lose? By sharing some of my story, by sharing some of the things that I might not have done great in order to learn lessons and give anecdotes to my team on how we can do things differently. How can I demonstrate my openness as a leader so that people understand what vulnerability means to me and allow and share that safe space for others to also provide some openness in their spaces? Do they know and can they see that I see them? Am I giving enough information to demonstrate that I see them for who they are, for the great values that they bring, and for, the intelligence that they present in all the things that they do, the experts in the field? Am I projecting what I truly believe? So am I being authentic as a leader? And am I demonstrating that authenticity in what I do and what I say and how I share with individuals across my team? Because that whatever you share across your team individually will be shared amongst each other. And so there'll always be individuals that will be taking notes, and is your realistic viewpoints and your, lived experience with my leaders the same as how I feel? Are we seeing the same things? Let's compare notes. That happens all the time. And is there trust? And is there, a sense of, this is really a safe space, we're doing great work, we don't have to worry about any other impacts, environmental, social, psychological, and we just proceed in this space with safety. So vulnerable leadership packages all of those things. So let's get into the individual items and see how we can, create more of this awareness in our organization. Foremost, I want to talk about emotional intelligence. And the key around emotional intelligence for me is, people always ask me, what is emotional intelligence? The fact that that is still a question today is astounding, because we use emotional intelligence and emotional data all the time to read each other, to send more information that packages a more distinct understanding of what we're trying to say. And so we don't really recognize that we're using it. We're unconsciously using emotional data. And so I define it as a set of emotional and social skills that guide us, the way we perceive and express ourselves, how we cultivate and maintain social relationships, how we assess change, how we cope with challenges and different degrees of pivoting, and how we use emotional information in an effective and meaningful way with one another, and exchange that from what's perceived as what I say and how I perceive what you say and do. And so for me, it's really the internal suit that any professional wears that cannot be seen or anticipated, because you decide how much emotional information you're going to package into your messaging, and how much additional, explicit ways you're going to demonstrate to your teams or your peers what it is that you're trying to do and how it is you're doing it. And so EQ, emotional intelligent information, just helps you solidify those ideas and those concepts and get buy-in so much faster. So the first thing I want to explore with you is, really about risks worth taking, the ones that are semi-calculated, but not too over-generated, and providing a little bit of vulnerability within your team from a perspective of an anecdotal past experiences, sharing your best, worst story. And what that means is, what's an occasion where you led a team and things didn't go exactly as you planned, a project didn't go exactly as you planned, in interaction on a relationship level in business that didn't really go as well as you wished it had. Those are experiences worth learning from. And, failure is just about success around the corner. So providing some of that insight to your teams and peers further solidifies your leadership qualities and authenticity, and demonstrates that, hey, I'm willing to share with you something that I didn't do well. Let's see if we can avoid or do it differently. And how do we use that information as part of this project, this transformational change, as a way of learning on how to do things better. So a certain level of risk builds community. And what I mean by that is there's risk around, the work that you're doing to build a strong transformational product or project. And there's certain risks that you want to eliminate and mitigate. And manage risk is where you provide more control and more, elicit more leadership support. So you want to minimize economic risk and environmental risk and social risk, health and safety risk, and organizational management risk. But you don't want to apply the same constructs and processes and constraints when it comes to the creative side of what you're trying to do. So that's where risk can be a little bit more alleviated, risk measure, and building a team that is, able to really shine and bring their ideas and have those concepts flow. You break down the sense of, can I speak? You break down the barriers from, is it okay if I present a different idea than what my leader has? And then you allow for this whole creativity impact. And so providing less control on creative risk gives you more insights across the room. And what we want is to design in the room. So sometimes we go out and we outsource consultants because we need to do something quickly. And we know that our resources are overtasked and can't take on that one item. But ultimately, if we took a pause and we allowed ourselves the space and time to allow the people in our team to design in the room, to come up with ideas, to provide their perspectives on how that transformation is going to go and how those systems are going to react and how the end users are going to feel, it's really more applicable because you have all these different creative minds in the room that are living it day in, day out, and that hear it from their peers that they work with every day. So providing an opportunity for potentially your project to design really allows you to, get more creativity happening from the team. And you're also minimizing by that, the intention of creating interpretive risk. And so a lot of the times we're going to share communications around health and safety, or how to use, certain employment practices, and, HR managers. We're going to communicate that to the 9th degree. And we're going to make sure that interpretation is exactly as we want it to be perceived. But then there's areas where interpretation is best left to the author and the reader. And you want the reader to get different interpretation styles because you want them to provide you feedback based on interpretation that's going to feed the design of that transformation. And so sometimes you can be a little bit more fluid and creative and minimize the amount of focus around interpretive risk. The other aspect that we talked about just recently is failure is fine. We're getting more and more trend information across social medias that are providing a guidance towards it's okay to fail. And failure can be an investment, not just an expense. And what that means is that we are going to be continuously trying to develop a product that works. We're going to try and develop a process that meets all the needs. But in order to do that, we have to test some things out that will not be flawless. And so failure should be acceptable in your organization, and demonstrating that through the ways that you can use a practice like Agile or use other methodologies like Lean just demonstrates the framework that an executive team can take on a certain amount of risk with a certain amount of understanding of how long risk is, and start talking about failure in a more positive, mindset. Knowing that nothing is perfect, setting that authenticity across the team, that I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, we're just going to try our darndest. And there's nothing wrong with that. And even if you're, the biggest type A person, and you are always striving for perfection within yourself, know that that is not a quality that everyone seeks, that it's okay to try and meet a certain goal of 80-20 and do what's best. And so perfection is not always attainable, and that should be something that is conscious in everyone's mind. And learning about how to build an organization towards value over accuracy is really in line with those last 2 points. How do we demonstrate to an organization, what is it that you really want to get out of this transformation? What's going to hit the mark for you over the accuracy of other data points or financial aspects or timeline aspects? So, what is it that is really going to make success and value meaningful in that project? So those are the sort of the topics and the themes that you always want to hit on, and reiterate that language so that you're building that within a community, which is your team and your stakeholders. And as leaders, we don't want to eliminate all the elements of risk in our teams, because it really dilutes authentic outcomes. And I urge you to kind of think back to some of the projects that you've worked on or you've led in the past, and see those more traditional, let's say waterfall, but not even waterfall pertinent, but like some of those more traditional projects of 20 years ago, where things had to line up a certain way or they were not successful, versus today where we can kind of drop some of those heavy weights and really try things out in a way that is meaningful and builds a more intuitive transformational work plan. Now let's talk about openness, because being vulnerable means being open, but openness is really an ability to create trust, and listening is the key, personality trait or competency in being able to build trust. Because if I hear what you say, I can react and respond and replay what you said to say, I think I heard you. Let me tell you what I think I heard, and if I got it right, then you're just really informing that person that you care about what they're saying, and you care about their viewpoint. And that's really important for vulnerable leadership, because you might hear things that you've never entertained before, hey, Joanne, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Erin, sorry to interrupt, but I'm not seeing the screen change, and I'm just wondering whether it's just me or whether it's for everybody.
Yeah, for me too. I can't see, the screen moving.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me stop sharing. Which slide did it stop?
The very first one.
Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? That's terrible. Yeah, we were a few slides in. Let me try to reshare. I don't know I must have hit a button by mistake. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
So
I clued in when I heard a click on your computer and the screen didn't move.
Yeah, and you're just seeing me talk. That's terrible. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It is possible that when I went into full mode, maybe it didn't like that. So what I'll do is I'll just try that once more. And I'm going to move away from this slide, and you tell me if you saw that I moved away. Yeah?
It's still on slide 4.
Still at risk worth taking.
Oh, okay. It didn't like that. Okay, good. So that's, so now we're back to the original view. So now you can see me doing these things. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we'll stay here. Thank you for sharing that. So basically, these are just, the visuals that you would have connected some of the dots as I spoke, but you heard me perfectly well, I'm sure. So now we are here on openness. Thank you so much. So listening builds trust. And if we get into some of the reasons why listening is important for leadership, it's even solidified by the World Economic Forum. So they put out this report on the future of jobs, and they put it out every year. And I really enjoy it because it changes every year, and you get to see what are the personnel or the traits and the skills that are really important over the transformation of technology and business. And so in this year, analytical thinking is usually at the top. So it's at the top again. Creative thinking, resilience is really interesting to have there. Flexibility and agility is important. Motivation, self-awareness, curiosity, and lifelong learning is really, really key in investing in yourself, but also being able to tell what you learn back to your team and sharing, which is really, really important for creative as well. Empathy is 7. Active listening is really high up on the requirements of today's workforce. And so active listening is the importance of being able to hear what you're told and to, retain certain information about people, use that information in a meaningful way, and be able to use that information to connect those people with others as well. So that active listening and being able to confirm what you hear is so important. And so I love this, the future of demands, the World Economic Future of Jobs report, because it really demonstrates, where we're going and shifting as a more authentic workforce. And one of the ways that we can, be more authentic and more in control of how we present ourselves in meetings. And what I mean is more in control is, you've prepared yourself for that meeting or that event. You prepared yourself in a way that you anticipate what's going on. You've visualized the room. You know what the topics are. But ultimately, you've done all that preparation, and then you get to the meeting, and then what? You're sitting there looking for the cues of all the things that you've anticipated, perhaps, or you're trying to look for the part where you can insert your agenda, perhaps. What's really interesting is when you do all that preparation, you come to the meeting and you just listen. Listen to what everyone has to say. And so I'm going to share with you some ways where you can crush any decision, negotiation, meeting, or anxiety that you have about a business decision with these 3 methods. So we've heard about visualization and anticipation, and anticipating the other parties in the room is really understanding what motivates them and what are their needs. Why are they sitting at that table? Maybe that's a table you put together for a specific purpose, or someone else has put together. But in transformational projects and many projects, regardless of transformation, you need to get certain people on board. You need to negotiate. You need to be able to set that path quickly. And so anticipating the other party's needs and motivations is key and critical. You can do that by writing down a list of what you think everyone around the table is there for, and what you think, their most important value is coming out of that meeting. Then you're going to visualize the meeting from the beginning to the end. So even as simple as, housekeeping rules, attendance, whatever, just envision the entire meeting as you think it will unroll, and, how that agenda will flow and who will speak and what they might say. Now you've done a ton of preparation, and, you have your own part in that meeting as well. But ultimately, once you've set yourself that work and that visualization ahead of your goals, when you walk into the meeting, you're ultimately ready to do 2 things: observe and listen. And it's really a powerful place to be in, when you can be the person who has done the homework, doesn't have anything, to be fearful of, because you've anticipated, you've understood, you've connected the dots. And then you can pinpoint the best ways where other people are trying to defend their position and maybe not hear others. And you can actually be the person that brings everyone together and then sells your point. So being that listener and perhaps not saying anything because your agenda is not being sideswiped or changed or, overthrown, that's really a position of power. The purpose and value that you'll get out of meeting with those abilities in place will serve you to develop and organize the work faster. You'll be able to demonstrate your leadership to the organization in a more efficient way. You'll eliminate waste and energy and tasks that go through meetings, come out of meetings, or result of meetings. And you'll connect deeper with your teams and peers because those salient points that you recorded throughout the meeting and you prepared your agenda will serve you in subsequent conversations with those people. So that's really, really key. And I encourage you to go out and try it. I do see a note in the chat, so I just want to know if anyone can tell me if that's a question or it was just a comment. Nothing? Okay. So communication goes really well when everyone at the table has packed their bag and dropped it at the door on the way into the meeting. And what that means is when you've really done the visualization work and you've done your homework into what you want to get out of that particular conversation, then you just simply, you take all of the stress and worry away from that. You leave that at the door walking into the meeting, and then you're just there to be present, observe, and listen. And that's really, really a powerful place to be in. And it demonstrates your authenticity through your actions all the more, they're all the more prevalent. So really encourage people to try some of those methods. It's also important as leaders to, find ways to know that the individuals across the organization, the people that you work with, your teams that you're leading, that they're being seen. And understanding more the individual themselves aside from the role. So it's really important that people are accountable, that they understand their responsibilities and that you lead them through that, but that you also can demonstrate that you understand, where they come from, some of the other viewpoints that they bring to a meeting or a work session or the culture that you're trying to develop within a project or a program. And so how do you get more connected and focused and be able to see all the people in the room? And I mean that, as an illustration, all the people in the room, but all the people that you work with. So some relatable information that carries that conversation forward is being able to share a little bit about your personal struggles or things that you've had to overcome that doesn't provide too much information, but just enough to give that sense of humanity and authenticity on what you expect from others and how you relate to others. That can be a really important tool. And it came across really interesting in this article I was reading, The Best Leaders Aren't Afraid to Be Vulnerable by Harvard Business Review. And a finite point in that article is that confessions are powerful tools. And when you think about the anecdotes and the stories that you could share, I mean, we've got years and decades of experience. And in each of those experiences are lessons that we can share and support one another with. And so those are really important tools for leaders to be relatable and to also elicit that same dynamic from your team. Yeah, I was in a private event where Sheryl Sandberg was, presenting to us her viewpoints on the things that she's been driving since she left Meta. And, a statistic that she was reciting on women in business was diversity, equity, and inclusion is today mostly led by women, but they're not being recognized for that effort. And so what does that tell you? Organizations continue to use this as a platform for checking a box on inclusivity and diversity and equity. Not all, but there are still a lot of businesses and organizations that are using it as marketing and media that don't really know how to implement programs that do elicit real change and support leaders who may not have uncovered this bias and these protocols in their own work before. And the work that women are doing is led by, is seemingly, provided to women to lead, because it's still seen by some organizations as being an emotional type of role. That DEI is, something that is most compassion based, and women should lead compassion based type roles. And once that role is filled and those things are underway, well, the job is done. And so recognition on the efforts and the requirements of DEI is still grossly misunderstood and misrepresented. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that leaders have to be involved in. They have to go find out how to build equity in their teams, how to talk about inclusivity, and make sure that diversity is known and well understood. And there's a number of ways to do that. And there's a number of trainings now that are available so that people do have the tools at their disposal, because there is still a lot of sense of walking on eggshells, that people are uncertain on how to tackle those topics and subjects in a way that will not stifle people from being open and sharing their feelings, but engage with them on a more meaningful level that creates that culture and embodies that environment. One of the greatest things that's come across allyship in the same vein as DEI, people who are stepping up and demonstrating their allyship in a number of different ways. And a male executive on allyship indicated in one article on how to be a better ally is the fact that once you get involved and once you really open your eyes to what's happening, you cannot take those glasses off. The world around you never looks the same. Once you acknowledge that things are not equitable, that things are not inclusive, and that you do have the power to make it change, then there's no turning back from that. And that's what you want, is more conversion towards a better DEI strategy and more implementable procedures and building blocks, because it's just the truth. I love that. Once you put on that lens, you can't take it off. And we hear a lot more about the importance of, different strategies, of different ways people are trying to accommodate their work environment and support people who have different ways of processing information. We know that no two brains are alike. And we know that being neurodivergent, for example, is my brain just works a different way than yours. And I use different patterns, colors, functions, textures, auditory functionality, and non-auditory functionality, verbal, non-verbal cues to do that work. And I have certain, processes or formulas that are going to help me be successful. And so I really think that it's important that leaders talk more about neurodivergence, peoples, and the importance of neurodiversity in an organization. It's not something that is just, demonstrated individually in your medical file and put to rest. It's something that stays with you forever, and is a way that you can share and work differently in order for everyone to be successful. And so just having that conversation in your team opens up the possibility of how people can feel more comfortable in sharing the needs that they have, but also the ways that, you can work with them. And that's really, really important. So on leadership styles, I think it's key to underline that a lot of people cannot pinpoint their leadership style. And part of that is going back to equity and diversity and culture. Not everybody sees themselves as a leader. They were not taught what a leader means. And I feel like leadership could be redefined nowadays based on what we know and how global our world is in the business and economies, that it's a reflection of who you are, and you are a leader in your own right. And everyone at every level is a leader. So it is not something that you are promoted to. It is not something that you get because you have the most accolades or academic background. It's not something that someone, adorns on you and says, you are now a leader. You are a leader. And it's just a matter of how you decide to practice and show that you're a leader. And so it's interesting when people cannot really define what is a leadership style and how are they, being a leader in their own right. Some of the things you can research is certain styles that exist that kind of qualify type of leadership that you might want to align with or get more insights on. And some of the leadership styles presented here based on Daniel Goleman's recommendations for types of leadership styles that really help certain organizations shine, and then in other environments might not work. So knowing the kind of leaders that you want in your teams and what's going to motivate your teams differently is key. You know, someone who's going to tell you what to do because it's important that you receive instruction might be a leadership style that works for some of your teams. But then there's leaders that are really just, you know, sharing a great vision and relying on the team to really put together the pieces in order to deliver on that vision. And it's important to have that leadership because they will present a creative mindset that other people just, you know, they don't see it that way, but they can execute. And so they need someone to paint that picture. And then, you know, the leaders that talk about the people and how important that is in order to generate, you know, positive change in an organization and put business forward, versus other leaders that will ask for, what do you think? And how do you think we should proceed, and create a more democratic leadership style. So there's really different types of leaderships that you could learn about, that you could go and seek out. And then there's just innately who you are and creating your own leadership style. There's nothing stopping you. I spoke about vulnerable leadership a few years ago, and people looked at me sideways because the word vulnerable has so many negative connotations in our society still to this day. It is seen as something as weakness, as, you know, being over emotional, too empathetic, you know, not mitigating risk. So the opposite of, you know, tightening things down, making sure we're all secure, and, you know, all our processes and audit risks are in place. So vulnerable's never been, you know, super positive, but I think that time is shifting. And so I really enjoy talking about the opportunities that people can demonstrate as vulnerable leaders. But you can define your own leadership style. And some of the things that build on that is, what do you want to be seen as? How do you want your organization to see you? And your ability to share who you are and demonstrate your needs and abilities demonstrates your leadership style. And once you've figured out your secret skills, your unique skills, the things that you really, really want to impart in an organization that's going to make them better, the things you do great, are the platform for your leadership style. Once you find out that is, you can do everything in your power to execute in that vision, because now you know. And so some of that wayward, not so sure thinking in earlier careers, or people who are still trying to figure out their leadership, is, what is my vision? So start out with what you're good at. You're going to hear all the influencers and all the CEOs talk about success with starting out with focus on what you're good at and use that as your platform. My leadership style personally was truly defined when I found my own intention. And when I found that intention and I really thrived in sharing with people my purpose, then it just connected a lot of dots for me on what perhaps I was already doing naturally, but now I had something to kind of hang my hat on and really share it in a more illustrative fashion with my teams and my leadership. And now I'm known for that. And so my purpose for leading people, organization, and projects is without question. People say it. I don't have to say it for them. They know what they're getting when they work with me. And that is so important. Building an organization is, for me, the equivalent to building a community. And there's no differences that, and no surprises that the world that you build within the work is similar to the world that you build within your personal life. Relationship challenges, relationship strengths, communication challenges, communication strengths. These are all part parcel to who we are and what we bring on our journey. Simon Sinek talks about it in his book, Leaders Eat Last, that too many workplaces are driven by cynicism, paranoia, and self-interest. I know that you can relate in all of your industries. But the best ones foster trust and cooperation because their leaders build what Simon calls a circle of safety. That separates the security inside the team from the challenges outside. As leaders, it's so important to ensure and demonstrate with your teams that their safety comes first. that there's an emotional safe ground, and that their work is not going to be jeopardized by the different thoughts and jumping around and potential pivoting that happens at levels above you, that you will create a safety net so that you'll manage those things that come down to your level and share with them what's integral and eliminate the things that would just drive them off the road and deter them. I really, really enjoyed that synopsis of that book and that excerpt, because it aligns with what I believe to be truly a successful leadership style, is seeing your team and your organization as a community, and building a strong, healthy community just makes a better world for everyone. Finally, in your leadership backpack, you want to be able to know that trust is there. That is a tool that you can pull out anytime, and it is integral to the vulnerable side of leadership, and sharing with your teams on how to build a really strong foundation and be able to deliver those products and those projects in a meaningful fashion. And so how do we build out our backpack? In there, you want to package in self-exploration on your own bias. Why do I know what I think I know? Where did it come from? Just really dig into some of the things that you take for granted when you think or feel certain things. Start at the smallest level. What are my assumptions across my organization? What are the things that I take for assumption, but I haven't really gotten all the facts yet? I always tell people, we don't assume, we have to dig in, find all the facts, and then we can deal with the truth. We can't deal with assumptions. Look at the emotional information that you're using and how you interpreted others, and test yourself on those interpretations are based on the things that you've seen with your own eyes, or what you've heard from others, or what you're basing on something you heard 20 years ago and applied to that. It's really important to unpack bias. And it's really a self-exploration that can be eye-opening, it can be educational, and it can be challenging, for sure. Ask more questions of your team. Ask them what they think. Ask them for guidance on certain things that could be difficult. As leaders, sometimes we take on a lot on our shoulders that doesn't necessarily have to be all on our shoulders, and we can pull from the great brains across the room. Train for how to handle failure and empower your team through it. So if you are not, terribly good with failure, if you kind of see yourself always going to a negative or a panic, or, trying to make sure everything gets back to normal, find out why, you're struggling with failure. And once you've trained through it and empowered yourself in failure, share that with your team, and share the fact that, we're going to deal with this together. It'll be fine. We'll be good. We'll just figure it out, right? And just bring that sense of trust and understanding and coolness. And you'll see how that trust will build and demonstrate actions immediately. Ask less technical questions and more non-technical questions. So for example, when someone says something as simple as, only 80% of the invitees accepted the meeting invite on Friday. Maybe there's no real reason that you're being told that information, but maybe you should just ask, so how does that make you feel? Because you might elicit new information from that person. Well, I really want to get a message across, and I felt like I needed more people in the room. Where you can coach them and say, well, 80% thought it was important, and the other 20 will get it through, your meeting updates, and they'll probably follow the 80% when they see that most of the majority of people are in line with what you're trying to do. So you shape that belief and that confidence in something as simple as, how do you feel? Acknowledge your own weakness and make sure that you hire people who can support those areas knowingly, and tell them why you hire them. I hired you because I can't do this, and you're an expert in this area, and I depend on you for that. And I'm excited to see what I'm going to learn from you, from all the expertise you're going to bring in this area. Remind people why they're the expert in your opinion. So I really like to go to a more personal level with individuals and highlight, I really appreciate your project management style, because you have a natural way of pulling together a team. I saw it in this project, and I really like you to work for me because that's the type of leadership I'm looking for. When you can pinpoint really finite things that people do well, it just demonstrates to them that you really see them. Change the language with your executive team on cost versus value. That's a very difficult conversation to have, but when your stakeholders can speak your language, it just makes it easier to deliver change. Change management is already hard. So if everybody's aligned on what the value is, then there's less scrutiny on the other factors like schedule and cost. Equally important, but sometimes over-focused. Ask what the ideal result is and demonstrate the investment that'll get them there. There's different ways that people can demonstrate value, and sometimes it's based on creative allowance or the right resources, or just understanding that we're okay if we know what failure is and how to move past it. Also, make sure that you have more than 2 mentors. Getting one mentor can be a challenge, but mentors in different areas outside of your own expertise provide you a perspective that gives you an opportunity to bounce ideas off of that you wouldn't normally get without that, other voice in the room. So having 2 or more mentors just gives you a more variety of people to pull ideas from. And it's not for nothing I'm a coach, but I really do think that coaching is a vital, important thing that everyone should have at one point in their life for an array of different things. But in business, it's really important because you're going to cross that finish line a whole lot faster when you have a plan and coaching advice in your corner, because then you don't have to use a lot of the mind to determine what's the best outcome from you. You have someone who's already done it and can demonstrate a method that'll work for you. Finally, the single most critical failure in transformation is communication and change management. The end-use perspective and organizational change management especially. When you see failure in another team that your project is dependent on, extend an olive branch to them and share with them and their people that it's okay to express to you what their challenges might be. There are other stakeholders in the room that don't always have the same leadership that you do, but when you can extend yourself to help solve some of their problems, you actually get better buy-in. So watching someone else's car on fire isn't always the best policy. Put out the fire and help them understand what you're leading on your side and how you can demonstrate some of that to support their area as well. I really appreciate being here and providing this very important topic on vulnerable leadership. Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to just dig into some questions. And I probably went over time, didn't I?
Thanks, Erin. We have about 2 minutes for questions.
Hi, Erin. It's Megan, and thank you for taking the time to have this discussion and chat with us.
Thank you.
I have a question. Sorry, I'm just going to pull up. So one of your slides that talked about World Economic Forum's The Future Demands More Relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, I saw analytical thinking, but I think critical thinking could also be added to that list, and just wanted to get an idea of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, critical thinking is very important, and it is on the list. It's just not the top 10. But you're right. Critical thinking is a skill that is really essential in being able to assess in the moment, apply different viewpoints, and be able to think about, if I don't have it, where can I go get someone else that helps me build that critical thinking in the team? So I completely agree with you. Which
you actually did mention. You talked about seeking the assistance of others if you're not able important to do. Yeah, agreed. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have one last question for Erin tonight?
I don't have a question, but I'm going to say, Erin, thank you so much. As usual, such a ton of and wealth of information. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. I appreciate all of you for sharing and listening.
We have a great big round of applause for Erin. Thank you for coming out and speaking to our club again today. It's always wonderful hearing your topics and your insights. You teach us a lot about vulnerability and emotional intelligence. It's, you know, it's one of those things where you think about common sense and how there seems to be a lack of that in the world today. So anytime we have an opportunity to learn more common sense and share it with others, it's a real blessing. So thank you for coming out tonight. I want to thank all of our guests and our members for coming out. It's been a thrill for me, an honor being your Toastmaster this evening. And if you're a member, I encourage you to reach out to us about future meetings, ask us questions, connect with us on LinkedIn. There are just so many ways we can help you. We even have a mentorship program too. So Kerry's my mentor. He's been a wonderful mentor to me throughout my time here at Toastmaster. So I encourage you to get involved, and it is what you make it. So let's make it a new beginning for each of us, whether we're an existing Toastmaster or we want to be a Toastmaster. We've had great ideas from Jonathan tonight about setting plans, making goals. There's just so much information that we get out of each of these sessions. So I want to encourage you to become a member. And if you're a PMP and you're a member, you can get 2 professional development units for every session, every meeting that you attend. So